All right, we'll get this show going. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to SNP 2022, wherever you're joining from. I'm incredibly delighted and grateful that you're all here in person and joining us online. So this is our third year at this space, and I'm really excited we could be back in person. This is our second year on Hopin/Gather.town platforms for our virtual participation. So we had, this is the first hybrid conference we had, or a two-mode conference we've done. So we've learned a lot of stuff. So we appreciate your patience and support. There are a few things that may not be as smooth as you are used to, either in an in-person or in virtual. So thank you for being patient with us. Before I jump in, just a quick thing for those joining us remotely on Hopin. This snapshot is not exactly what you see, but the thing I wanted to point out is when you're attending a session on a stage, if you have questions or if you want to chat about the current session, then you go to the stage tab and type your questions or chat with people in that session under that tab. If you have event-related questions or find other people in the event, then you go to the Events tab. So that's one thing I want to point out before I dive in for those joining remotely. Same thing for chat as well, stage versus event, so be mindful of that. What a year it has been. As I mentioned, I'm incredibly grateful and delighted that so many of you showed up in person. This opening session is a bit crowded because we wanted to avoid the time it takes to switch, kick us out, and put the barrier back on for the sessions. It takes 45 minutes, and we have a very tight schedule. So after this session, you should be able to spread out a little bit more in the three tracks. Okay. So the first dual mode conference, as I mentioned. Thank you for your support and patience. 146 papers this year in 3 tracks. It's a 27% increase from last year. And this is the first time we're doing 3 tracks in person. And Tom and Thorsten will talk about this later. 748 unique participants. We had about 644 in 2019 when we did this in person. Of course, our virtual conferences had a lot more audience as they're more accessible given folks didn't have to travel, but 553 in person is incredible. Thank you. And we have 200 people joining virtually. We hope you will find the conference experience is similar to what you had in last year's virtual conference, but we will work to improve as we move forward. We were able to give out about $73,000 in student travel support, 54 student travel grants, and 9 registration grants for just those participating remotely. This is thanks to our funding agencies, NSF, ARL, ONR, and IBM and IEEE Technical Committee. So thank you so much for your support and helping students participate in this conference. Finally, we had $145K in new donations this year. We are incredibly grateful for the donors, without whom this conference cannot be the way we do it. And even with so much support, you will see there are some things we couldn't do this year, like we don't have breakfast. Our apologies, but hopefully we can work towards fixing that. So this is not possible without the incredible effort and support of a lot of hardworking and energetic group of people. So please join me in thanking our organizing committee. They have put in an incredible amount of work. It's almost a year and a half. So we have a long committee. And this year, Alvaro Cardenas, who was our general chair last year, has stepped up to work on the virtual experience as well. The website doesn't reflect it, but I wanted to mention it here. So he's also our unofficial virtual chair. We have a steering committee now. I don't think we've had this the last time we were here in person, but got incredible support and advice from our steering committee and our incredible technical committee on TC on security and privacy, Brian, Gabriella, Young, and Tegan. Thank you all for your support. As I mentioned, this conference wouldn't be possible, in some of the things that we do wouldn't be possible without the incredible support from our donors. We are grateful for NSF, ARL, IBM, ONR for their travel grants and the IEEE Technical Committee. And incredible, as you can see, many of these are long-time supporters. We also have some new ones, Intel, INL, and Skyflow this year, and Certic. So we thank them for their continued support, and hopefully many of our past donors who haven't come back during the virtual times will be coming back next year to us. We have a very tight and incredible and exciting program of events. We have a poster and networking reception this evening in Pacific Concourse, so one level below, from 5:30 to 7:30. Our poster share has done an incredible job, and thank you for the suggestions from the community. For those who weren't able to present their papers in 2020 and 2021 in person, we offered them the opportunity to bring their papers as posters, so they have an opportunity to showcase their work from the last 2 years. Okay? So we have about 45 posters in person. We have another 10 that we'll be doing virtually. Networking on Hopin is always open, so you can click on the networking button on the side, and you will be randomly paid with someone. That was a very popular feature. But during our student speed mentoring session this evening at 6 p.m., that networking feature on Hopin will be configured to pair students with non-students so they can have a virtual mentoring experience. So please participate. And otherwise, networking is always open on Hopin, not just for those who are participating virtually, for everybody here. All of you should have access to the Hopin platform, and you can take advantage of that. Virtual poster session, as I said, there are some posters that are just virtual, and all of our posters will be available in the virtual poster session for our remote participants. And this will take place at 7:15 a.m. And again on Wednesday evening in 2 different time slots, so the people joining from different time zones may be able to participate. We have short talks in parallel on Tuesday evening, 5 to 6 in Ballroom A. And this year we have, for the first time at S&P, LGBTQ plus allies social hour. Everyone is welcome. This is going to happen in Waterfront AB. And thanks to Google for sponsoring drinks for the social hour. We have a TC business meeting Tuesday evening, 6 to 7:15. This will be entirely virtual this year on Zoom, as we wanted to open it up for all our TC members, which is about 3,000 people. And also our TC chairs couldn't join us in person, so this was a better way to do this. I know there were some concerns about costs of S&P, so that'll be a topic that we will discuss during the TC meeting, so please join us. You should all receive a Zoom link soon if you haven't already. Okay? As I mentioned, virtual poster session on Wednesday evening after the last technical session. Okay? We have an incredible set of workshops, 6 workshops on Thursday, May 25th, and the programs and links are available on our webpage. Couple of reminders. This is also printed behind all of your badges. It's not visible because you have probably maybe a food card behind your badge obscuring it, but the proceedings from this conference are available at this link, and there is a password and the username that is printed behind your badge. So please access them, and in the tradition of S&P, you will have access to all S&P proceedings from past years as well once you go to this link. Okay? And please tweet using the hashtag SP22 or IEEE-SP. And a few announcements. So as you see, seating in each room, we've tried to reduce the number of seats at the tables to allow for distancing. So seats in each room might be a little tight, so help each other find seats. This room is a little bit more packed than we expect just because we are doing all 500 people in this room. As always, this is the third time, and for those of you who haven't been in this space, if you see outside, we are right next to the street, San Francisco, and it's an open space. So please be mindful of your belongings. People can access this space easily, so just wanted to give you a warning. Apparently, people know that there are a lot of conferences happening here, so apparently a spot for professional thieves. We have reduced seating at lunch tables this year to allow for a little bit more distance. And there will also be a few tables with even more reduced seating available if you prefer to do it that way, okay? And with that, I have to confess to a little royal mess up on my part. You all have this, what I thought was an awesome program for the conference, but there is a copy-paste error. Sessions 8 and B, the paper listings is not accurate. So thankfully, our website and Hopin, you can maintain an agenda on our Hopin mobile app, will give the right listing of papers. My deep apologies for the authors in those sessions. I'm going to see if I can find a workaround, but right now I have a plan, but until I can execute it, I will keep it to myself. Thank you, and my apologies again for the authors in those two sessions. Finally, Code of Conduct. We have instituted a Code of Conduct in 2018. It's available. We want to make this conference a welcoming place for everyone. Please review the policy, and I hope all of you adhere to this policy. We typically don't have too many issues, but I hope it continues that way. But if at all you find something that violates this code of conduct, there is a number on our website that you can call. It'll allow you to reach me, and you can also report by email. And there are also folks walking around with this code steward badges. You can find them and report any incidents you have noticed or experienced as well. Finally, you've seen this. While you're speaking on stage, it's okay to not have your mask since there is enough distance, and while eating, we have to take them off. But at all other times, we request that you keep your masks on. We understand that many of us are vaccinated, and maybe this is, some of us might feel this is not a requirement, but many of us have to travel back, and testing positive will put a damper on your travel plan. So that's why we have this in place. So please kindly keep them on and help all of us get back safe and healthy. With that, I will introduce our incredible program chairs, Thorsten and Thomas, to come on stage and talk about the program this year.
But first of all, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Thorsten.
Okay, yeah, a warm welcome also from my side, so either here in person or remote. My name is Thorsten Holz, and together with Tom Ristenpart, I had the great pleasure to organize this year's program. But first of all, I would again like to thank Rakesh and this team, because Rakesh not only organized an in-person conference, but he also organized an online conference. So 2 conferences, and this was an incredible amount of work, and it's a great pleasure to be here today. This is the 43rd edition of the symposium, and it's the first hybrid one. So you will see that everything is probably a bit new to us. So we will have a mix of both in-person presentations, remote presentations, which are pre-recorded videos. So after 2 years of just virtual events, we are now getting back here in person, but you will still feel that we are in the middle of a pandemic. So we have about 40 papers where the authors are not able to come here, either because they cannot leave the country due to the pandemic, or they didn't get a visa, or due to other issues. So we try our best to make this still a good experience for everyone. And so the next 3 days will be exciting, so enjoy the time. meet people, talk to people in the hallway, and yeah, it's good to be back to in-person events. Still, given that we are in the pandemic, please wear the mask and be a bit cautious. We heard the reports from ACM Chi where a lot of people got infected. So honestly, I hope that we will not have that here at IEEE, the Symposium on Security and Privacy. On Thursday, we will have 1 day of workshops. Rakesh already mentioned this. So there's Woot, Langsec, DLS, and several others. So in case you stay here, or probably you can also register if you want to stay longer. So this is an interesting week full of papers on security and privacy. In the next about 50 minutes, I want to present an overview of how we came here. So basically, what was the process used in order to assemble the program. Everything started back in January last year when when it became clear that Tom serves together with me as the PC chair. So the first step was to assemble a program committee. Overall, we assembled a PC with more than 170 members. This is about 170 members because some people had to step down during the process, given that it's a huge commitment for 1 year, or they had to pause in one cycle. But we had about 170 members in each of the review cycles, helping us to review all these papers. What we tried to do is to cover a wide geographical distribution. So we had people from the US, from Europe, Asia, Australia. We had people from industry, from academia. So we tried to assemble a PC with a broad expertise, given that the symposium receives quite a wide variety of papers, ranging from theoretical results over implementations, usability aspects, and many other topics. So we had to make sure that we have the right people on the PC, and I think this worked also in most cases. A challenge was that the conference is growing year over year, so we had more than 1,000 submissions this year, and so we had to scale the whole procedure. And what we introduced for the first time was the concept of associate chairs. So these were specific people that helped us, especially with scaling. So in the first phase, for example, they proposed us PC members, which we could invite. Then they helped us to manage reviews. They supported the discussion and the rebuttal phase and helped us also to converge on decisions. So without these associate chairs, it would have been impossible for Tom and me to actually manage all of this. So I'm very glad that we found a few people who served in this role. The PC members reviewed on average about 20 papers across 3 cycles. So per cycle, about 6 to 8 papers. And reviewing 20 papers is a major commitment. So without the PC, we also would not have been possible to assemble the program. And on the website, you find all these names of these people. And so they did most of the work in order to actually assemble the program we will enjoy in the next 3 days. We always strive for positive and constructive reviews. So we always encourage them to provide constructive, actionable feedback that the authors could use. Of course, this is a bit subjective. Some of the reviews you have received might not have this feeling, but this is the typical process, and we tried our best. And what we also try to do is to have a positive communication and online discussion. I think this worked in most cases, and I'll come back to some of the mechanisms we used on the next few slides. Given the current situation, we didn't organize a physical PC meeting and also no virtual one, but what we did is all discussions took place in HotCrab, so we only had online discussions in order to decide on which papers to accept or reject. I think overall we had a good experience. Maybe the process can also be improved in the future, but that's something Tom and Patrick can figure out in the next years. For the review process, what we did is we reduced the number of deadlines from 4 to 3. This was based on a discussion we had last year in the community and also the experience from last year where the number of submissions in the first deadline was rather low. So therefore, we decided to skip this and stick to 3 submission deadlines. And in each of these review cycles, we had 2 rounds of reviews. In the first round, we assigned 2 PC members for each paper, and if both reviews were clearly negative, so if there was clearly no chance that the paper would end up in the program, then we decided to early reject this paper. And these early reject notifications were sent out after about 1.5 months. In the second review phase, we assigned 2, in certain cases also 3 additional PC members, especially for controversial papers, in order to make sure to get additional opinions. So for each paper, we had at least 4 PC members who reviewed this. What we then also introduced is an interactive rebuttal phase, where the basic idea is that we released the reviews after the second round, and then we had about 1.5 weeks in order to exchange messages between the authors and the reviewers. So the basic idea is that the authors receive the reviews, they can comment and answer questions, but the reviewers could also react to these responses. So honestly, I think closer interaction between authors and reviewers really helps. So I think we had overall a pretty good experience. Many cases where there was a lively discussion between authors and reviewers. But on the other hand, we also had cases where either reviewers were not really responsive or authors only submitted their rebuttal on the last day of the rebuttal phase. So in many cases, this also did not work. But I think we learned a few lessons, and if you have ideas how this whole process can be improved, please let us know, because I think this is also one of the challenges to solve for the future. How can we have a more constructive discussion between authors and reviewers to improve the review process? Notifications were sent out after about 2.5 months, and we had 3 cases of ultimate decisions. And this is also something where we did a change in the review form, because we did not use the, let's say, traditional form of accept, weak reject, reject, and strong reject, or variants of this. But we only had 3 decisions that the reviewers could take. So either they could recommend to accept the paper, they could recommend a major revision, or reject. So only 3 choices, because we think that reviewers should stick with what they should see as the ultimate outcome of this. And this generated also quite a few lively discussions. And I think what we learned is that it makes sense to also have a separate category, so shepherding, and this is something that is also reflected in next year's call for papers. Major revisions were handled similar to last year's, so the reviewers came up with a list of revision expectations. These were communicated via HotCrab, and the authors of these papers had 2 cycles in order to address their revision expectations, submit the paper again, and we also used HotCrab as an anonymous communication channel. So in case authors had questions, they could send these questions directly to the reviewers, and this also helped to clarify some of these expectations. What we try to do is we try to assign the same PC members such that they can check whether the revision expectations have been met. This worked in many cases. In some cases, reviewers disappeared, but overall, we were pretty happy with how everything worked out. This then led to the following submission statistics. So what you can see on the slide is for each of the 3 cycles in blue, the number of submitted papers. So we see a bit of growth over time. In red, you see the accepted papers. You see we are quite selective. So the IEEE Symposium on Security and Privacy is a rather selective conference. That's something that we also see here directly in the numbers. And in green, you see all the papers that received a major revision decision. So you see actually quite a few of the papers also received a major revision. And across all 3 cycles, we received a bit more than 1,000, so 1,012 papers. From submissions to program is actually quite a complicated process that I want to explain as part of this figure. So overall, across all 3 cycles, we had 1,012 submissions, of which 55 were directly accepted. So this means these papers directly made it into the program, and the reviewers recommended to accept it, potentially with an assigned shepherd. Overall, across all 3 cycles, we also had resubmissions of 104 papers. So these were papers that were either from last year's symposium, where they received a major revision decision, or they received a major revision decision this year, and the authors also opted to resubmit to one of our 3 deadlines. So for example, a paper that was submitted to the first deadline, received a major revision, could have been resubmitted to the 2nd or 3rd deadline. And this is the pool of 104 major revisions. Out of this pool, 92 papers were accepted, and 12 were rejected. So you see the acceptance rate for major revisions is about 88%. So the vast majority of these papers actually eventually make it into the program. Overall, we had this 55 direct accepts plus the 92 accepted revised papers, which is a total of 147 papers, which leads to an acceptance rate of 14.5% for this year's program, which is slightly higher compared to the last years, where we had about 12% on average. Overall, 144 papers received a major revision decision. So this includes, so therefore these 2 errors are not really mutually exclusive, but 144 papers across all 3 cycles received a major revision decision, and the remaining papers were rejected. Taking a look back to the quarterly submissions in the past years, we see a rather steady growth year to year. Typically, we see more submissions in the fall and winter deadlines. I think this is more related to the traditional deadlines we used to have earlier, and also the fact that the conference is in May. Taking a even further look back, so historically back until 2010, we see that the community is growing. So compared to last year, we have about 6% more submissions. For the first time, more than 1,000 submissions. Acceptance rate is a bit higher compared to last year's, but still rather selective. And maybe this is also something we as a community can somehow address, that the number of accepted papers is rather lowish. Mm-hmm. What we introduced this year is a so-called Research Ethics Committee. So if you attended last year's conference, you probably remember all the discussions we had related to the Hippocrates Commits paper, and this is a direct reaction to this. So we introduced a new committee, and the committee is a subcommittee of the program committee in order to check paper for ethical considerations and also human subjects research. So what we did in the first step is we updated the call for papers to better reflect the expectations. And this is a lesson learned based on last year's conference. In the review form, we added a new checkbox where reviewers could mark a paper for ethical review. And then each of these papers that was marked by at least 1 PC member was checked by the Research Ethics Committee. So typically 1 or 2 REC members were assigned to review the ethical concerns. These were discussed, potentially also based on feedback during the interactive rebuttal phase. And then the REC had separate discussions, so outside of the typical PC discussions, where they discussed all these papers. They also organized video calls in order to decide on recommendations. We had 2 cases where the Research Ethics Committee recommended to reject papers based on ethical grounds. In both cases, the paper was also rejected based on technical grounds. So this was actually no real effect in practice, but it shows, I think, that the process works. What we plan to do is also to do a write-up on the lessons learned of organizing the Research Ethics Committee for the first time, because I think there are some valuable lessons learned by this committee that also the broader community should learn, especially because we had many recurring types of discussions related to vulnerability disclosure, how to treat human subjects, and other topics. So I think this committee can also develop guidelines in order to guide future research in this area. Okay, talking about papers now. So here you see a word cloud of all the 147 papers accepted this year. I would just want to briefly comment on 2 things. First, one of the keywords you see quite often is attack and attacks. That's basically right in the middle. And this is, I'm not sure whether I should say varying trend, but definitely a trend. I'm not sure whether this is good or bad. So honestly, I think it's a bit bad, but maybe you think different about this. So what we see is that we have quite a few text papers being submitted and also accepted. So many people spend quite a lot of time on breaking stuff, while papers that propose defenses, or basically how we can protect security and privacy in better ways, have a harder time. So I can only encourage you to also work more on the defensive side, because I think we should not only break stuff, we as a community should also make sure that people are safe and secure. So please also focus more on the defensive side. And I think we have several great papers that propose defenses or mechanisms or methods, how we can actually, for example, do private computations, or how we can fix problems in practice. Another keyword that's quite prominent is model. So we see quite a few machine learning papers. And especially this intersection of machine learning and security is getting more and more traction. So I think this will also influence our community in the next years to come. Then a few statistics, and I will keep this a bit shorter in the interest of time. But two things that I just want to mention is here is first an overview of the paper topics. So on the x-axis, you see basically the categories. You see that we received quite a few machine learning papers. Then we have system security and applied crypto as the top 3 submission topics. And hate and harassment is on the right-hand side. So, but this is for the number of submitted papers. So this is about the 1,000 papers. Interestingly, when we turn to the number of accepted papers, it changes a bit. So now attacks is number 1. As I mentioned earlier, we've spent probably too much time on just attacking stuff. Machine learning drops to number 6. So it seems like many of the ML papers that are submitted are eventually rejected. And not sure what's funny about this, but okay, great. So I love ML and security. It's not that I'm dissing them. No, it's great. Great work, people. Please continue. So this is basically just a rough outline. We will dig deeper into the numbers and also plan to hopefully write up a PC chair report. But this was an interesting statistic that I saw. Yes, question. Pardon, I didn't get the yeah, this is cut down. So this is security and privacy of something. So this is not the title of the full thing, obviously. And then one thing that I found interesting is, or not interesting, but impressive, is how much work is actually put here by the PC and all the members. So we have more than 3,100 reviews written, with close to 2 million words being written and more than 10,000 comments. So there was quite a lot of commitment based on the PC, the associate chairs, the research ethics committee, and all people involved. What we plan to do is to publish a more detailed write-up of what we have learned, how this also corresponds to lessons learned in the past years. This will take a bit of time because it's quite a bit of data that we want to process. But in case you have feedback of how everything can be done better, feel free to reach out, because I think scaling our community to larger numbers is something challenging, and that's something we need to address in the years to come. And with this, I would like to conclude with a thank you for quite many people who have made all of this possible. So first, there are, of course, all the authors and speakers, because without you, we wouldn't have this program of about 140 papers that will be presented in the next 3 days. The PC and all the external reviewers spend quite a lot of time on reviewing these papers, providing constructive feedback. So without them and without all their unpaid work, everything would not have been possible. And then my special gratitude goes to the organizing committee. I already mentioned Rakesh and his team. There were many, many other people, for example, Scott as a video chair. Then we had Masha, who was preparing the website. We have awards. We have people working for the posters and everything. So actually a lot of people who make this possible with behind-the-scene work. And without all of them being involved, everything would not have been possible. Then we have the technical committee with Brian and Gabriela, who provided a lot of guidance, especially in tricky situations. We have the steering committee, to which we also reached out in order to get some clarifications on the general policy. So this was also very helpful. And then, of course, it's you, either in person or remote. So we heard more than 700 people attending this event in the next 3 days. So thanks a lot for coming, for making this possible. And then there are people like Kate or other people from executive events who make sure that everything runs very smoothly. So thanks a lot for all these organizing people, and enjoy the hybrid conference in the next days to come. Thank you.
I think we should definitely have an extra round of applause for Thorsten. If you didn't realize, it's a 2-year service commitment. Thank you very much. And as with the rest of our working relationship, he did all the hard work on the presentation stats, and I get to do the fun stuff, including awards. So we had an award selection process for distinguished paper awards. Procedurally, Thorsten and I chaired the award selection committee, and we had a number of PC members who generously donated some time to do some extra work at the end of the review process in the last few months to try to select some papers for their overall excellence and quality. So we shortlisted based on overall rankings from reviews as well as nominations, and had about 16 papers that the committee then looked at in more detail to decide which ones were worthy of a Distinguished Paper Award, and we ended up with 4 Distinguished Paper Awards this year. So I'll just ask that the authors, when I announce the paper, stand up if you're here, or if you're on Zoom, I guess you can dance in your chair or whatever. And while we give a round of applause to the authors, and then you can sit down, we'll go on to the next paper. So do we need a drum roll, perhaps? All right. So the first paper, in no particular order, is 4 attacks and a proof for Telegram. Congratulations. Number 2, Asleep at the Keyboard, Assessing the Security of GitHub Copilot's Code Contributions. Number 3 is Invisible Finger, Practical Electromagnetic Interference Attack on Touchscreen-Based Electronic Devices. Congratulations. And finally, last but not least, Committed to Trust, a qualitative study on security and trust in open source software projects. Congratulations. So if you saw at the bottom, we have the sessions indicated for these award papers. Congratulations to all the authors, and just a small token for what I'm sure was a ton of hard work on these technical papers. And with that, we will move on to Test of Time Awards and try to make sure that our remote presenter can join.
All right, so thank you everyone. I apologize for not being able to be at the conference. Really, it's my honor to chair this Test of Time Award committee. Next slide, please, Tom.
Already did it. Can you see what the slides are?
Not really, but I'm just assuming that now it says the 2022 Award Committee. So, this committee, we have Thorsten, the current PC chair. We have Chris Kugel, myself, Anina O'Preyer, and Adrian Perrick. Now, these are either current chairs or past chairs. So I would get to that. I think we actually have a very good committee with us being seasoned and active researchers. Next slide, please.
Go ahead.
Yep. So in terms of the criteria, so first of all, test of time means that your paper is so good that after a while, people are still talking about it or still referencing your work. So for our committee, our task is to look at papers from 2010 through 2012. So these are 3 editions of the Oakland conferences, the conference. And then, so you say, what criteria do we use to decide test of time award? It's very simple: lasting impact on both research and practice. And so then you say, how do you decide that a paper has lasting impact? So obviously, we want to look at some objective evidence. Then we're going to rely on our experience and expertise to discuss, so that we don't let our subjective opinion take control. So what I did was I inherited a set of guidelines and documents from the previous committees, the committees of the previous years. So essentially, we are following basically the same set of criteria and process. I add a little bit to say that let's be more concrete when we talk about objective evidence. So what I did was for all the 3 conferences, I mean the 3 editions of the conference, I actually looked at all the papers, and then I created a list of for each paper. I essentially use Google Scholar to find out the citation count. So I provided the whole committee a list of papers and the citation count, and tell them that, hey, look, we should use this as a essentially a starting point, so that when we say this paper is good, at least we can point to say, hey, look, I mean, there are some evidence that this paper has been referenced many times, but that's only one of the criteria that we use. Like I said, it's only starting point. Then we rely on our expertise and being active researchers in the field. We essentially discuss why this paper is good. Okay, so those are the how we set it up. And in terms of the more detailed process, one thing that we try to make sure we can do is make sure that we want to avoid potential conflict of interest. Like I said, we are, we are from many different places, so we have collaborators, sometimes our own papers. So I told the committee members that they should send their nomination directly to me, so that it doesn't have to be out in the open initially. So once I have the list of nominations from the committee members, then I share with them. I share with the committee. Then we essentially, vote to say, hey, which, what are the, let's say, top 1, top 3, or top 2, top 3 papers, and then we discuss and then make a final decision. That's the process that we agree upon. In reality, it went a lot smoother than what I just described. I think when I presented when I'm going to present the papers in the next few slides, you would understand what I'm talking about. So basically, the papers that we decided that should get this awards, they're essentially getting unanimous or near unanimous votes. So they're almost, okay, we're done. There's no need to discuss. It's that simple. So with that, I'm going to move to the next slide. Tom, please.
Okay, it's one of the award slides. Are you ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody should be should say, when you shut up, let's get to the award. Okay, here we go.
Here we go.
Yeah, so I'm going to present, it's essentially chronological order, reverse chronological order. So the first one is the Mayhem paper in 2012. So this is actually a great paper. I mean, so actually I used some of the materials in my lecture slides. I mean, nobody going to say that's not cool. I mean, I think everybody should say that's cool that somebody read your paper and then incorporate materials in their lectures. So this paper is about, when you look at binary, say, hey, there's vulnerability. How do you know the vulnerability actually is serious or actionable? So the Mayhem paper talks about, hey, when I tell you a bug report, I actually accompany the bug report with actually exploitable, with a real attack, meaning that, hey, here's an input that you can cause the exploit, meaning that you can just spawn a shell. That's a big deal. So really that spawned a lot of following work in malware, in software security, malware analysis, attack defense, the DARPA Grand Challenge, you name it. In terms of techniques, the authors did a great job in terms of saying that, hey, how do we, make sure that when we use symbolic execution or concurrent execution, we can actually achieve both accuracy and scalability and efficiency. That's an awesome paper. It's really, everybody on the committee really love this paper. So with that, so Tom, do we have the authors coming up, or we wait until the last?
Yeah, come on up.
Up to you guys.
Let's give a round of applause.
Yep, great, thank you. Yeah, that's really great. Congrats. Again, like I said, this is a great paper, and I use it in my lectures as well. Okay, Tom, can we go to the next slide, please?
Ready?
Yep, great. So now 2011, essentially, I mean, this is this is an area that a lot of people felt like, wow, this is an amazing piece of work, talking about how to analyze the essentially the question that people talk about spam. So, people sending spam is so annoying, but why would they send spam? How do they make money? So all those questions actually, I think this is one of the first paper that did a very systematic study of the whole value chain behind spam, and also multiple parties in this whole infrastructure. I'm not talking about the technical infrastructure such as writing exploits or dropping malware or the hosting infrastructure. I'm talking about the actual value chain, the sort of the money trail. So this is really awesome piece of work. Again, I actually use a whole, I use whole slide deck in my in my class. That's one of the favorite lecture that students really enjoy. Again, this also spawned a ton of follow work, not just by the same group, but also by many other researchers looking at, sort of the economic factors and what we can do in addition to this technical means to counter these kind of internet scale threats and frauds. So again, great piece of work. Really, congratulations. Thank you. I think Jeff and Nick will be there. So let's have the authors come up to receive the awards, please. Great, congrats again. Next slide, please.
Ready.
Okay, great. So the next slide. So again, we actually we love the paper so much that we decided to give 3 awards. So this is the last, of course, not the least. So this is Cyan. So again, actually, I talked to Adrian a lot about this paper. Like almost every time we met at a conference, we would talk about this paper. And I keep repeating this. Actually, I'm using some of these materials in my lecture as well. So a lot of what we do in security is about patching stuff. I'm sure Adrian felt the same way about internet security, routing security. So again, in 2011, they have this Cyan paper. Essentially talks about essentially a new kind of internet architecture where you have explicit trust. So using trust domains to essentially isolate and negotiate some of these routing decisions so that you can provide resilience and better security. And I would say that, I know by talking to Adrian that he's actually taking this into practice. I mean, he has technology transfer efforts and start company and pushing this technology. So really, I think this is actually one of the very few examples where the work is not just academically outstanding, but it is actually going to make a huge impact in practice. So again, congratulations. I think Adrian is going to come up to get the award as well. Yeah, congrats. Yep, so that's great. Congrats again to all the award winners. Like I said, their work really their work really has had a lasting impact. That really make our job a lot easier. I would also like to thank the whole award committee. I think we did a great job. Of course, that's patting ourselves in the back, but really, like I said, these authors they did great job that make our work so much easier. So congrats. I hope to see you guys soon in the next conference. Okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Wenki.
Yep. Yep.
Did you want to announce that?
Thank you, Wenki. That concludes this session. Just for our award winners, we will have awards that will be available on Tuesday, tomorrow sometime, so we'll keep you posted. That concludes this session. The next session, we're running a bit over, so we will play some we can start our break and start going to our sessions, but all the places we will play the teaser videos for the next 9 papers in the sessions. Thank you everyone for joining, and hope you all enjoy the conference over the next and workshops over the next 4 days. Thank you.